And hello, and welcome back. My name is Michael, and to, together we are walking through Bushido, the Soul of Japan by Inazo Nitobe. Not simply to understand history, but to extract principles that sharpen character, refine discipline, and strengthen the way we show up in modern life. If you could, before we continue, please give me just a quick indication whether the sound is okay, whether I'm coming through nice, loud, and clear. And then, yeah, it will be good for us to continue. Uh, this series is about collecting knowledge. It's not about collecting knowledge. It's about internalizing our standards. And if these reflections that we are currently going through, if they challenge you, if they ground you, or help you organize your thinking in this world that constantly pulls at our attention, I'd appreciate if you like the video, share it with someone who values growth as well, and subscribe so that you don't miss the chapters ahead, or for the books to come. So before we move into this chapter 16, let's briefly revisit where we left off. In chapter 15, Nitobe explored how Bushido moved beyond the battlefield and into the bloodstream of society. What began as a warrior's code slowly shaped education, governance, and even the expectations placed upon ordinary citizens. Honor was not confined to combat, it became a social expectation. Duty was not dramatic, it was woven into daily conduct. Reading that chapter, I found myself asking a simple question. If a code can influence an entire nation, what might a personal code do for an individual? When a father consistently demonstrates integrity, his children absorb it without formal instruction. When a leader models restraint instead of ego, their team mirrors that composure. Character scales. It does not remain private. It multiplies, and with just that sort of brief recap of chapter 15, we go into chapter 16, which turns its attention towards continuity. Nitobe wrestles with whether Bushido can survive modernization, foreign influence, and social change. He is essentially looking whether moral foundations endure when circumstances evolve, and that question feels strikingly current because today we also live in an age of transition. Technology accelerates everything. Opinions spread instantly. Trends replace one another in weeks. In such an environment, it becomes easy to drift. It becomes easy to adopt whatever is popular rather than commit to what is principled. So, as we approach this chapter, consider this. When the world shifts beneath your feet, what anchors you? Is it discipline, responsibility, clarity of purpose, or is it convenience? With that in mind, I will start uh, my reading of chapter 16, which is titled, Is Bushido Still Alive? So take a comfy seat and listen up if you've got a copy of the book of your own. Yeah, let's read along together. And I apologize if I do make any mistakes. Is Bushido still alive? Or has Western civilization, in its march through the land, already wiped out every trace of its ancient discipline? It were a sad thing if a nation's soul could die so fast. That were a poor soul that could succumb so easily to extraneous influences. The aggregate of psychological elements which constitute a national character is as tenacious as the irreducible elements of species, of the fins of fish, of the beak of the bird, of the tooth of the carnivorous animal. In his recent book, full of shallow asseverations, and brilliant generalizations, M. Le Bon says the discoveries due to the intelligence are the common patrimony of humanity. Qualities or defects of character constitute the exclusive patrimony of each people. They are the firm rock which the waters must wash day by day for centuries before they can wear away even its external asperities. These are strong words and would be highly worth pondering over, provided they were qualities and defects of character which constitute the exclusive patrimony of each people. Schematizing theories of this sort had been advanced long before Le Bon began to write his book, and they were exploded long ago by Theodore Waite and Hugh Murray. In studying the various virtues installed by Bushido, we have drawn upon European sources for comparison and illustrations, and we have seen that no one quality of character was its exclusive patrimony. It is true the aggregate of moral qualities presents a quite unique aspect. It is the aggregate which Emerson names a compound result into which every great force enters as an ingredient. But instead of making it, as Le Bon does, an exclusive patrimony of a race or people, the Concord philosopher calls it an element which unites the most forcible persons of every country, makes them intelligible and agreeable to each other, and is somewhat so precise that it is at once felt if an individual lack the Masonic sign. The character which Bushido stamped on our nation and on the samurai in particular cannot be said to form an irreducible element of species, but nevertheless, as to the vitality which it retains, there is no doubt. Where Bushido, a mere physical force, the momentum it has gained in the last 700 years could not stop so abruptly. Were it transmitted only by heredity, its influence must be immensely widespread. Just think, as M. Chason, a French economist, has calculated, that supposing there be 3 generations in a century, each of us would have in his veins the blood of at least 20 millions of the people living in the year 1000 AD. The merest peasant that grubs the soil bowed by the weight of centuries, has in his veins the blood of ages, and is thus a brother to us as much as to the ox. An unconscious and irresistible power, Bushido has been moving the nation and individuals. It was an honest confession of the race when Yoshida Shoin, one of the most brilliant pioneers of modern Japan, wrote on the eve of his execution the following stanza. Full well I knew the course must end in death. It was Yamato spirit urged me on to dare whatever betide. And formulated, Bushido was and still is an animating spirit, the motor force of our country. Mr. Ransom says that there are three distinct Japans in existence side by side today. The old, which has not wholly died out, the new, hardly yet born except in spirit, and the transition, passing now through its most critical throes. While this is very true in most respects, and particularly as regards tangible and concrete institutions, the statement, as applied to fundamental ethical notions, requires some modification. For Bushido, the maker and product of old Japan, is still the guiding principle of the transition and will prove the formative force of the new era. The great statesmen who steered the ship of our state through the hurricane of the Restoration and the whirlpool of national rejuvenation were men who knew no other moral teaching than the precepts of knighthood. Some writers have lately tried to prove that the Christian missionaries contributed an appreciable quota to the making of New Japan. I would fain render honor to whom honor is due, but this honor can hardly be accorded to the good missionaries. More fitting it will be to their profession to stick to the spiritual injunction of preferring one another in honor than to advance a claim in which they have no proofs to back them. For myself, I believe that Christian missionaries are doing great things for Japan in the domain of education and especially of moral education. Only the mysterious, though not the less certain working of the Spirit is still hidden in divine secrecy. Whatever they do is still of indirect effect. No, as yet Christian missions have affected but little visible in molding the character of New Japan. No, it was Bushido, pure and simple, that urged us on for weal or woe. Open the biographies of the makers of modern Japan, of Sakuma, of Saigo, of Okubo, of Kido, not to mention the reminiscences of living men such as Ito, Okuma, Itagaki, etc. And you will find that it was under the impetus of samuraihood that they thought and wrought. When Mr. Henry Norman declared, after his study and observation of the Far East, that only the respect in which Japan differed from other Oriental despotisms lay in the ruling influence among her people of the strictest, loftiest, and the most punctilious, punctilious codes of honor that man has ever devised. He touched the mainspring which has made New Japan what she is and which will make her what she is destined to be. The transformation of Japan is a fact patent to the whole world. In a work of such magnitude, various motives naturally entered. But if one were to name the principal, one would not hesitate to name Bushido. When we opened the whole country to foreign trade, when we introduced the latest improvements in every department of life, when we began to study Western politics and sciences, our guiding motive was not the development of our physical resources and the increase of wealth, much less was it blind imitation of Western customs. A close observer of Oriental institutions and peoples has written, "We are told every day how Europe has influenced Japan and forget that the change in those islands was entirely self-generated, that Europeans did not teach Japan, but that Japan of herself chose to learn from Europe methods of organization, civil and military, which have so far proved successful. She imported European mechanical science as the Turks years before imported European artillery. That is not exactly influence," continues Mr. Townsend, "unless, indeed, England is influenced by purchasing tea of China. Where is the European apostle? Ask our author, or philosopher, or statesman, or agitator who has remade Japan." Mr. Townsend has well perceived that the spring of action which brought about the changes in Japan lay entirely within our own selves. And if he had only probed into our psychology, his keen powers of observation would easily have convinced him that the spring was no other than Bushido. The sense of honor which cannot bear being looked down upon as an inferior power, that was the strongest of motives. Pecuniary or industrial considerations were awakened later in the process of transformation. The influence of Bushido is still so palpable that he who runs may read. A glimpse into Japanese life will make it manifest. Read Hearn, the most eloquent and truthful interpreter of the Japanese mind, and you see the working of that mind to be an example of the working of Bushido. The universal politeness of the people, which is the legacy of knightly ways, is too well known to be repeated anew. The physical endurance, fortitude, and bravery that the little Jap possesses were sufficiently proved in the China-Japanese War. Is there any nation more loyal and patriotic? Is a question asked by many, and for the proud answer, there is not. We must thank the precepts of knighthood. On the other hand, it is fair to recognize that for the very faults and defects of our character, Bushido is largely responsible. Our lack of abstruse philosophy, while some of our young men have already gained international reputation in scientific researches, not one has achieved anything in philosophical lines, is traceable to the neglect of metaphysical training under Bushido's regimen of education. Our sense of honor is responsible for our exaggerated sensitiveness and touchiness, and if there is the conceit in us with which some foreigners charge us, that too is a pathological outcome of honor. Have you seen in your tour of Japan many young men with unkempt hair, dressed in shabbiest garb, carrying in his hand a large cane or a book, stalking about the streets with an air of utter indifference or mundane things? He is the shosei, the student, to whom the earth is too small and the heavens are not high enough. He has his own theories of the universe and of life. He dwells he dwells in castles of air and feeds on ethereal words of wisdom. In his eyes beams the fire of ambition. His mind is athirst for knowledge. Penury is only a stimulus to drive him onward. Worldly goods are in his sight, shackles to his character. He is the repository of loyalty and patriotism. He is the self-imposed guardian of national honor. With all his virtues and his faults, he is the last fragment of Bushido. Deep rooted and powerful as is still the effect of Bushido, I have said that it is an unconscious and mute influence. The heart of the people responds, without knowing the reason why, to any appeal made to what it has inherited, and hence the same moral idea expressed in a newly translated term and in an old Bushido term has a vastly different degree of efficacy. A backsliding Christian, whom no pastoral persuasion could help from downward tendency, was reverted from his course by an appeal made to his loyalty, the fidelity he once swore to his master. The word loyalty revived all the noble sentiments that were permitted to grow lukewarm. A band of unruly youths engaged in a long continued student strike in a college on account of their dissatisfaction with a certain teacher disbanded at two simple questions put by the director. Is your professor a blameless character? If so, you ought to respect him and keep him in the school. Is he weak? If so, it is not manly to push a falling man. The scientific incapacity of the professor, which was the beginning of the trouble, dwindled into insignificance in comparison with the moral issues hinted at. By arousing the sentiments nurtured by Bushido, moral renovation of great magnitude can be accomplished. One cause of the failure of mission work is that most of the missionaries are grossly ignorant of our history. What do we care for heathen records? Some say, and consequently estrange their religion from the habits of thought we and our forefathers have accustomed to for centuries past. Mocking a nation's history as though the career of any people, even of the lowest African savages possessing no record, were not a page in the general history of mankind written by the hand of God Himself. The very lost races are the palimpsest to the deciphered by a seeing eye. To a philosophic and pious mind, the races themselves are marks of divine chirography, clearly traced in black and white as on their skin, and if this smile holds good, the yellow race forms a precious page inscribed in hieroglyphics of gold. Ignoring the past career of a people, missionaries claim that Christianity is a new religion, whereas, to my mind, it is an old, old story, which, if presented in intelligible words, that is to say, if expressed in the vocabulary familiar in the moral development of a people, will find easy lodgment in their hearts, irrespective of race or nationality. Christianity, in its American or English form, with more of Anglo Saxon freaks and fancies than grace and purity of its founder, is a poor scion to graft on Bushido stock. Should the propagator of the new faith uproot the entire stock, root and branches, and plant the seeds of the gospel on the ravaged soil? Such a heroic process may be possible. In Hawaii, where it is alleged the church militant had complete success in amassing spoils of wealth itself and in annihilating the Aboriginal race, such a process is most decidedly impossible in Japan. Nay, it is a process which Jesus himself would never have employed in founding his kingdom on earth. It behooves us to take more to heart the following words of a saintly man, devout Christian, and profound scholar. Men have decided the world into heathen and Christian without considering how much good may have been hidden in the one or how much evil may have mingled with the other. They have compared the best part of themselves with the worst of their neighbors, the ideal of Christianity with the corruption of Greece or the East. They have not aimed at impartiality, but have contented to accumulate all that could be said in praise of their own and in dispraise of other forms of religion. But whatever may be the error committed by individuals, there is little doubt that the fundamental principle of the religion they profess is a power which we must take into account in reckoning the future of Bushido, whose days may seem to be already numbered. Ominous signs are in the air that betoken the future. Not only signs, but redoubtable forces are at work to threaten it. Wow. Okay. So after reading that chapter, what stands out to me is not nostalgia for the past, but um, the urgency for internal structure. Nitobe is arguing that society should freeze in time. He's not arguing about that, sorry. Um, it should not freeze in time. He's exploring whether uh, moral clarity can remain intact when everything else evolves. Uh, that speaks directly to growth. Mental growth begins the moment you stop reacting and start observing yourself. So, for example, if your phone dictates your focus or mood and even your productivity, then your environment is leading you. But when you decide to advance how your time is used, perhaps setting aside focused hours for work, training, study, or family, you move from being pulled to being directed. That shift alone changes the trajectory of your results. Success rarely announces itself loudly. It forms quietly through disciplined decisions. A person who chooses to sleep at a reasonable hour so they may wake up early and train is not chasing applause, but they're building stability. Someone who tracks their finances carefully, invests consistently, and impulsive spending avoids impulsive spending is not uh, performing wealth, they're constructing it. Now, Bushido was built on the understanding that conduct matters more than appearance. In modern terms, that means aligning behavior with long term objectives rather than short term emotion. Health offers a clear example. It is easy to promise transformation, it is harder to maintain daily habits to support it. Drinking water instead of sugary alternatives, walking when you could sit, preparing meals instead of ordering convenience. These are quite decisions. Over months and years, they compound into strength, clarity, and resilience. The same principle applies to happiness. Happiness is rooted in stimulation. Happiness rooted in stimulation fades quickly. Happiness rooted in stability endures. When your finances are organized, when your schedule is structured, when your relationships are nurtured intentionally, your mind experiences fewer internal conflicts. You are not constantly repairing avoidable problems. Instead, you're building momentum, and momentum reduces chaos. Freedom then is not the absence of difficulty, it is the presence of order. When your time is organized effectively, you create space for what matters. If you allocate focused hours for deep work, you produce higher quality results. If you protect evening for family, you strengthen connection. If you schedule reflection or study, you sharpen your thinking. Now, consider relationships. They do not strengthen through intensity alone, they strengthen through consistency. A short daily conversation without distraction can build more trust than occasional grand gestures. Listening attentively, honoring commitments, and showing up when it would be easier to withdraw, those actions create durability. Selflessness becomes practical and not abstract. Wealth too benefits from the mindset. Instead of chasing every opportunity, you select aligned ones. Instead of reacting to setbacks emotionally, you analyze them calmly. Over time, measured decisions outperform impulsive ones. So, chapter 16 challenges us to examine whether we're drifting with culture or directing ourselves with conviction. The world will continue to change, markets will fluctuate, new technologies will emerge. The question is whether your internal code remains stable enough to guide you through those shifts. Taking full responsibility is where that stability begins. When you stop attributing outcomes to external forces alone and instead evaluate your preparation, your discipline, and your decisions. You reclaim your power. Responsibility does not need to burden you. It strengthens you. It removes excuses and replaces them with action. And action repeated consistently builds confidence. Confidence builds competence. Competence builds results. So if this reflection resonates with you, I encourage you to watch, not just to watch, but to implement. Choose one area, your health, your finances, your time management, or a key relationship, and apply structure to it this week. Then return to this channel and share what changed. Growth becomes stronger when it is shared. If you are finding value in this series and it is helping you think more clearly about discipline, responsibility, and long-term success, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with someone who is serious about building a stable, principled life. We're not here merely to consume philosophy. We're here to live it. And I will see you on the next chapter, which sadly will be the final chapter of this book. This great book that we've been going through over the last few weeks. If you look at the playlist, I put all the live streams in a playlist. Yeah, we're coming to the end of Bushido, and I will be announcing the book we are going to go through next, which is a brilliant book. But I will be letting you all know what that book is in my community's feed. So turn your notifications on so that you know what the next book is, and it will give you enough time to pick up a copy so that we can all just go through it at the same time. So I thank you again for joining me today on Michael Reads, and I will see you on Saturday when I will be going through the final chapter of Bushido, The Soul of Japan. Take care. Goodbye.